the Delhi studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Arnab Goswami on the debate at 10. Presented by Berger Easy Clean. Powered by Reva University, Quick Heal Secrite, Green Lamb Laminates, PolicyBazaar.com and Cucina. Co-powered by Mankind Pharma and Nexon EV.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Time now for the nation's sharpest opinion. Putin has said that this war may go beyond the Middle East. Is he saying it because that's his view? Is he saying it because that's his expectation? Or is he saying it because that is his earnest hope? I think it is Putin's hope and wish. According to Chinese media reports, China's PLA has deployed 6 warships as part of its naval escort task force. It's been reported that they have departed from Muscat to an undisclosed location. And the United States has deployed its most advanced aircraft carrier in the region. The Chinese media a few hours ago has said that Beijing will boost coordination with Iran on multilateral platforms such as the United Nations, the SCO, and BRICS, quoting its number 2 Li Qiang. And this happened after talks with the Iranian vice president. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm narrating to you these developments so that the sequence is not lost on us. So that you don't go by the constant deliberate misreporting of the BBC and the obvious bias of propaganda outfits like Al Jazeera. Because the reality must be told. Because the reality of the Chinese hand must be exposed. Because this mystic Chinese interest, these frantic meetings and handshakes in Beijing and Moscow, this sudden, thrilling, gleeful cozying up to the Iranians, which we predicted here at Republic. Remember, we said it clearly that the cat is out of the bag. This is all a China operation. I said it last week clearly. I couldn't have been clearer than that when I said that, ladies and gentlemen, this is a desperate Chinese move threatened by the India-Middle East-Europe corridor, which will forever have a huge and terrible impact on the failing Belt and Road Initiative. China will do anything. China is funding Iran, and Iran is funding the Hamas. And that is why in this series of connected developments, I view the sudden decision to give the death penalty to 8 Navy veterans from India in Qatar as part of that overall game put pressure on India. Because India has stood with the right, because India has questioned the Hamas, because India, ladies and gentlemen, has supported Israel, and because India in its sovereign economic interest is tying up as a major global player to provide that alternative to the BRI, a much better alternative involving democratic nations, which is the India-Middle East-Europe corridor. Ladies and gentlemen, China will always be guided to go to any extent in self-interest, to the ends of the earth to inflict damage to protect its own expansionist, selfish and economic interests. We know exactly what their role was in spreading COVID. We know exactly what their role has been in being the silent hand behind Moscow. And they are misleading the world, and now global analysts are talking about what we said at Republic for almost over a week, the Chinese hand. And I request the so-called global media, which knows very little beyond its own narrow, myopic interests, to learn to speak up. The question is, where what is blowing up in Israel is because of the growing economic war between India and China. Because China is insecure, terribly insecure of India's growing economic prowess. So it's making everyone from China to Qatar so insecure that we are sending him into a flap with the odd and sudden fluttering. Ladies and gentlemen, remember and never forget that what has happened on October 7th is within weeks of the announcement of the India, Middle East, Europe corridor. Biden's talking about it now. Thankfully, America is waking up to it, speaking up. The American media never understands and has no depth to understand beyond their own domestic issues. Ladies and gentlemen, this war is a war with multiple points of global economic interests. And there is one point being spoken about, which is to blunt India's galloping pace and influence globally. So is there an India link to what is happening in Israel? It is a question on many minds. The developments from the crew on the ground first, and then we'll debate.
Day 21 of Israel-Hamas war. Israeli forces are bulldozing Hamas targets with brief ground strikes as well. 3 terror operatives have been eliminated.
במהלך היממה האחרונה, כוחות חי"ר, שריון, הנדסה, בליווי כלי טיס, ביצעו פשיטה ממוקדת במרכז רצועת עזה. כחלק מההכנות של המרחב לשלבי המלחמה הבאים.
Israel is still reeling under the aftermath of October 7th attack by Hamas.
This is the damage, the extent of damage that they have done, that nothing here is left lively. They wanted to destroy everything, and that is what exactly the terrorists of Hamas have done. The rocket launcher, the RPG grenades, and also the axes and whatnot they were carrying. Even they were carrying the gasoline with them so that they can kill the people and burn them.
The mass attack on Israel comes just 28 days after India, Middle East, Europe corridor was announced. A game-changer project aimed at checkmating China's Belt and Road Initiative.
आने वाले समय में यह भारत, पश्चिम एशिया और यूरोप के बीच इकोनॉमिक इंटीग्रेशन का प्रभावी माध्यम होगा। यह पूरे विश्व में कनेक्टिविटी और विकास को सस्टेनेबल दिशा प्रदान करेगा। भारत कनेक्टिविटी को क्षेत्रीय सीमाओं में नहीं मापता। सभी क्षेत्रों के साथ कनेक्टिविटी बढ़ाना भारत की मुख्य प्राथमिकता है।
US believes the attack was aimed to deal a blow to the corridor.
I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, I have no proof of this, just my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall. And we can't leave that work behind.
India is undoubtedly emerging as an economic and diplomatic powerhouse, not just with a transcontinental corridor, but also as a manufacturing hub. iPhone production will soon begin in India. And at a time when China is being challenged globally, their stand on the war raises questions.
中方的立场基于事实和正义，响应了国际社会，特别是阿拉伯国家的强烈呼声。在巴勒斯坦问题上，中国没有私利，只要有利于和平，中方都坚定支持；只要有助于巴以和解，中方都尽力而为。
Can Chinese interests and their possible role in the war be overlooked? Let's debate.
And as we are broadcasting tonight, we have our crews on the ground, and we are being informed that the ground offensive is going to move in extremely fast and is around the corner. And we've seen intense missiles being fired on both sides. So I think it's really intensifying over the next few 24 to 48 hours is what is being expected by most analysts. Sushant Sareen from Delhi, Avishag Ali, Israeli journalist from Tel Aviv, Burzin K. Wagmar, Center of Iranian Studies at the SOAS South Asia Institute in London, Michael Tracy, journalist from New York, Tatiana Kokareva, senior journalist from Moscow. We have with us Andrew K.P. Leung from Hong Kong, and Dr. Saeed Elahi, political analyst from Islamabad, and from that window out there is from Ramallah in Palestine, Mustafa Barghouti, who's the leader of the Palestinian National Initiative and a member of parliament. Mr. Leung, much as China has tried, there is global focus on the Chinese role, and this has been seen generally to be a sponsored attack, sponsored by China as a response to the announcement of the India-Middle East Europe corridor. And it is not only Republic talking about it, it's been spoken about in the American media circles, informed foreign policy and geostrategic analysts, and I think it becomes incumbent that China should take responsibility for what is going on instead of pretending to be an uninvolved spectator to this. And I think it's very irresponsible for China to continuously try and threaten global peace, development and global health because of its own internal issues. I know your defense ministers and foreign ministers go missing, your global capitalists are abducted and go missing, you're a complete mess, and presently our economy is an abject failure. But however, to do something like this crosses all limits of ethics, which you already crossed once during COVID, but this is terrible, to try and provoke the Hamas into carrying out this action on October 7th and leading to dangerous global consequences. Mr. Leung, would you like to respond to that, please?
Well, thank you. If you can allow me to say a few words. First of all, don't be over-bloated with the so-called corridor, because it doesn't threaten at all China's Belt and Road Initiative. And there was a recent multinational Belt and Road Summit attended by 130 countries around the world for the Belt and Road. How many countries are interested in the Indian corridor? How much trade can Indian promote?
Many more than are interested in the BRI now.
And sits at the heart of the supply and value chain. I hope that you can let me finish. So I don't like to be interrupted when I haven't finished. Secondly, China's interest is in peace, because peace, of course, is beneficial to China's Belt and Road, not war. And that's why China is sending a special envoy to broker a peace as soon as possible, because there is a huge humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And then, of course, the terrorism must be condemned. The Hamas, the initial terrorism, of course, cannot be tolerated.
So what you are doing? What you are doing,
for a
Mr. Leung,
punishment
Mr.
of
Leung,
Palestinian people,
Mr. Leung,
including many children
Mr.
and
Leung,
women.
can you hear me?
Half of the deaths are
Can you hear me, Mr. Leung?
There was a huge humanitarian crisis in Gaza,
Mr. Leung,
where their fuel is even denied. Without fuel, the hospital cannot operate. So I think that even Israel and the United States are awakened to the fact that they just can't go in and invade Gaza, because it's a highly concentrated city, and then driving half of the population, over 1 million people, to the south, depriving them of the access to water and medical facilities, is totally inhumane. And that's the other side of the picture. That's why China is proposing a sustainable two-state solution, responding to
I think
Palestinians'
Mr. Leung, I think you can hear me.
For statehood.
Mr. Leung, I think you can hear me.
Consistently, their citizens have been marginalized. Even the Palestinians who become Israeli citizens, they are treated like subhuman species. They're not denied a lot of their rights. So no one is asking for this. And then to throw mud at China is totally ridiculous.
Wow.
Because as I said, China's interest is peace, not war. Because war is detrimental to China's well-known mission. Okay.
Thank you for your comments. I want Burzine to respond from London to that with just one point. This is about as ironic as your concern about global health after having caused the COVID epidemic, after having invented the COVID virus in your labs in Wuhan. And don't get provoked. Don't walk out of the debate, Mr. Leung, because I want Burzine to respond to you. And I think the mask is off as far as China is concerned. Burzine, what are your thoughts on this? The bigger global play that is being speculated about.
Chinese C-700 missiles, Arnab, were intercepted by Israel in 2014, which were being delivered with Iranian Fajr missiles from the Syrian port of Latakia. So the Israelis have experience of this, of the Chinese having supplied Hamas, not just financially, but also militarily. So that's point number one. Point number two, asking Israel to conduct a ceasefire is asking it to stop self-defending itself. And according to international law, that is simply not on. Israel has every right to continue to do so because Hamas is not asking for a ceasefire. Hamas only wants Israel's destruction, along with Iran. And China can sit ambivalently about it and say it has no stake in the matter. But that is simply not on. 5 senior Hamas commanders have been killed as we go on air, Arnab, including the deputy head of Hamas intelligence, Shari Baroud, who was responsible for the operation on 7th of October with Yahya Sinwar, the top chap in charge of Hamas currently in the Gaza Strip. And Ismail Haniyeh has been asked to leave Turkey after 7th October, who was obviously there because Turkey could not guarantee his security anymore. And of course, in all probability, he would decamp to Doha, which of course brings me to Doha, which, like Pakistan, if you remember, is our strategic non-NATO ally. And it's high time Washington and London realize that we need to press down and in fact double down on Doha, which has been the Club Med of terrorism for the last decade. The Taliban, the Hamas, everyone in the Islamic world finds a resort in Doha to hold themselves up and be sustained by the Al-Thanis. And we need to clamp down on this. Doha, exactly like Pakistan, runs with the hares and hunts with the hounds. It has the largest CENTCOM base, Al Udeid Air Base. At the same time, it's got the Taliban office and Hamas, Khalid Mishal and others, the top brass, are comfortably ensconced there. We need to come down very heavily on Doha, and what has happened to these retired Indian sailors, the current death sentence that has been passed yesterday, is simply Qatar lashing out and showing its Islamist credentials for what it's worth. It is not an honorable arbiter, even though those 2 Israelis were senior citizens were released in the last few days. Qatar and Turkey are both vying and jockeying for Islamic power in the region and to show that they can manage to do something. But Israel knows only too well that they are dishonorable arbiters. So that also needs to be squarely put in place. And finally, Arnab, the Iranian foreign minister yesterday, in fact, this morning, New York Times, very casually mentioned, and one is struck when Foreign Minister Amir Abdollahian says that 6,000 Palestinian prisoners ought to be released so that the Israeli hostages can be freed. One wonders, why is Hamas not doing the talking, but the Iranian foreign minister posits this point, which also tells you that Hamas has been, like Palestinian Islamic Jihad, under Tehran's control for a while as such. And please note, final point, Arnab, finance for Hamas does come from Qatar and elsewhere, including taxes on goods that are transited through Gaza, through southern Gaza from Egypt. That is the source of income. But all military hardware that Hamas currently holds in its arsenal is all to be traced back to Tehran. Thank you.
Well, I mean, you made your very extensive arguments and you are very passionately speaking about this. Tatiana, what Burzine has said is born with fact. Fact is also, Tatiana, that countries can come together for self-interest and for a period of time forget about ethics, forget about morality, Forget about the murders of babies. Forget about the rape of women. Forget about women being raped in front of the corpses of their husbands who have just been murdered. Forget about 85-year-old women being taken hostage. I hope Moscow will not forget all this simply because it feels it has to be part of the China team. How unfortunate will it be, Tatiana, if all Moscow remains is an important part of the China team? Is that all you want to do? Is that all the global standing that Moscow wants to have? To be part of the China team? To fight for China's economic interests? To fight for China's sovereign interests? To fight for China morning, day and night? Have you lost your independent voice? Are you not seeing out here the impact of the India, Middle East, Europe corridor on China's economic plans? And I hope, because I really hope, I look forward to the day, Tatiana, when people like you who are well informed will come once again as independent voices and not part of the China team. You see, what has happened and what China has done is bad. Is bad. And you can't be with what is wrong and what is evil. What has happened is bad. In the pursuit of their economic interests, they have sanctioned and legitimized the use of women and the murder of babies as instruments of conflict. Please don't stand with them, but you know at the core is simply Chinese economic insecurity. And I can debate with you on that if you wish to, but I'd like to hear your response.
Oh, that's nice. If you're done, then I can actually give you a response. Is it all? Are these all the insinuations that I'm going to hear, or is there more?
No, there can be much more, but I'd like to hear your response before I respond further and others respond to you.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, look, first and foremost, let's be at least seemingly honest in this debate, and let's not forget that there are other countries who have interests in the matter, economic interests, and a huge economic interest of the US in this specific escalation is undeniable.
Tracy.
You can talk about China all you want. I will dare to remind you that India, China, and Russia are in the same union, which is called BRICS. So let's please not forget that we are allies in this, and you can try to align Russia in this all you want, but let's not forget that where we have a terrible attack that did happen, and we've spoken about this. I've seen all of the videos. They still haunt me. I have friends in Israel. I've lived in this country. I love it. But is it worth what is going on right now? We spoke about this very week, all of the bombardments, and right now Hamas is striking Israel again as we speak. Right now I think we heard probably in Ashkelon that my Israeli counterpart, it probably was her audio that we heard an alarm and were calling for people to get to safety. If I'm wrong, correct me by all means. Hamas is striking Israel right now as we speak, and the bombardments that have been going on that already took the lives of over 7,000 people in Gaza are obviously not working. Now, I understand the interest of the Netanyahu government in the continuation of the offensive. And I understand that a ground offensive, if anything, will literally make things even worse.
Tatiana,
if it's even possible to make it
you need to understand that giving Gaza to the Palestinians in 2005 was also not working. So we run out of choice.
I understand, and I completely
you need to understand that. We were not supposed to get in. We don't want to get in. We don't want to control the Palestinians. We gave it back to them in 2005. And you mentioning that I'm in Ashkelon suffering from rocket barrages constantly. It's not only this time. I'm suffering it for the past 17 years. So you need to understand it's a broader problem. It's not a single problem that we have to deal with it right now. It's something that is much more broader, much more deeper, and rooted in education of anti-Semitism from birth to the Gazan people. And not only in Gaza. I'm talking about also the Palestinian Authority, who's considered to be moderate.
Look,
but at the same time, their educational
I lived in
system,
Israel through several escalations. I lived in Israel through several escalations. I lived through several attacks, several shootings.
Let me please make my point, and I would love to hear your response after. I'm saying that at the Palestinian Authority as well, as long as the hate towards Jewish people and the Jewish state will not end, as long as they will not eliminate the education of hate of Jews from birth, this problem will never be solved. There will never be peace. And if you don't understand the root of this extremely, extremely devastating reality that we and the Palestinians in Gaza are now experiencing, then unfortunately there will never be peace. We need to look at the root of the problem in order to solve it.
The root of the problem, may I come in, Avishag and Tatiana?
The root of the problem.
I'm sure Tatiana wants to respond.
Go for it.
The root of the problem. Actually, I'll tell you one thing. I'd say one thing to you, Tatiana. I have lost many friends in America and the West when I have gone all out exposing their hypocrisy vis-a-vis the Ukraine war. I have called them the global instigators. But, Tatiana, in all seriousness, I say to you, and Sushant knows it better, Michael knows it much more, they are students of geopolitics unlike me. China is global instigator number one here. And I think we need to be very watchful of that.
Come on,
I think
Arnab.
Biden, when he said, I tell you, I'd say what Biden, no, see Tatiana, I'd say this to you. What Biden has said, that he says, I have no proof of this. Nobody has any proof, neither with Michael have any proof, but the instinctive sense to connect the dots is to ask yourself a basic question, Michael. Who is the ultimate beneficiary of all this? It's like holding shares in a company. You eventually will go on to who is controlling the shares of the holding company who will make the profits. In this particular case, Michael, every arrow that we shoot, every line we connect eventually leads up to China. It's an instinctive connect of the dots, Michael. What do you think here? I mean, I say to Moscow, Tatiana, don't just be there in the China team, please. Russia is an influential country with its own history. You have your own history. You have your own language, your history, your civilization. You've had your own stance. I would say to you, even during the world wars, Stalin had his own position. He didn't always agree. Please remember your country's history, your country. And everyone on your country made Churchill had to come down to convince Stalin. You were not part, you were never a B team. Even during the Second World War, you were not part of the B team. Here you are just being on the China team, and that's looking unfortunate for Moscow.
And
you may not look at it that way
team,
in Moscow, but that's the way it's been looked at around the world.
As well.
Well, I mean, you know, that's your problem. You see, that's the problem. You've got to understand. Tatiana, don't forget, if there was anybody who stood with Russia when nobody else did, it was Modi. So please be careful of what you say there.
Of the Red Army that fought the Nazis.
May I
What's
address the question,
happening right
Arnab?
now that Russia is choosing their own side of history and are shaming the history, the beautiful history of the Red Army fighting the Nazis and defeating them eventually.
Look, Russia is on the side of Israel in this just as much as you can imagine. Look, you need to understand one very specific thing, a very specific thing that everybody seems to ignore and that you spoke about.
Coming to you, Michael. Give me a minute. I'll come to you, Michael.
That extra step that you need to understand, that these bombardments, this indiscriminate bombing of Gaza that you're doing today, it is beneficial to Hamas, because every family where people are dying is going to join Hamas. You need to come to the negotiating table. It does feed that hatred towards Jews. Come on, I lived in Israel.
I'm sorry, Tatiana. Tatiana, Putin did not even forgive the Wagner chief. What do you expect Israel to do with these terrorists? I mean, what are you talking about? Don't make me speak more about what happened to the Wagner chief.
Though.
But Michael wants to respond.
Rockets are flying from Gaza.
Yeah.
So as you may know, Arnab,
Michael, please. Michael wanted to respond in this.
Here in the United States. Yeah, as you may know, the House of Representatives in the United States has been in turmoil for the past several weeks, but they just finally installed a new speaker by the name of Mike Johnson, and he gave a lengthy interview last night explaining his positions on various geopolitical issues. And one thing he repeated is a very common refrain now that we're hearing from American politicians, which is that he is positing the existence of a new axis of evil. That's the term he uses. And that axis of evil, according to Johnson and others who have repeated this line, constitutes Iran, Russia, and China. They're now this new evil axis that they're likening to somehow the Axis powers in World War II and trying to galvanize support for some sort of military offensive against. So if you're asking me who is an instigator on the world stage, is it the United States, is it China? I don't doubt necessarily that in certain instances China might be an instigator, but I'm most familiar with the American political dynamics. And they're going out of their way, the people in the positions of power, to instigate China, Russia, and Iran and have them coalesce together into some sort of unified bloc against the United States. I don't see China sending 2 carrier strike groups into the Eastern Mediterranean to point missiles at Iran. That's the United States. I don't see the United States attacking Syria a night or so ago because they have these deployments of U.S. troops stationed there for now over a decade, and nobody can explain what the purpose is except apparently to get the United States drawn into a conflict now which is engulfing Israel and other powers. So in terms of instigation, without absolving China, I do think, at least from my perspective, it's worth being cognizant of what the United States is doing to create conditions that seems to be leading intractably toward a very cataclysmic conflict.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
But then this then Sushant becomes this then, Sushant, becomes an endless attempt at depleting the United States. If the idea is to deplete the United States, Sushant, which has its own serious economic challenges and political challenges right now, and if in the process all attempts at peace, development and connectivity are also challenged, right, then inevitably are we going to get drawn into a global conflict? There's been every attempt made, Sushant, to localize this conflict, but it's not going to remain that way, it seems. And I've seen this arrest and then the death penalty given out to the 8 Indian Navy veterans in Qatar as part of that. Do you also read it that way, Sushant?
No, I won't read the events in Qatar and I won't tie them up with this necessarily, because that's been going on for many months now. But yes, I would agree that this conflict is unlikely to remain limited, and not for the reasons that Israel doesn't want it to remain limited or the United States wants to widen the war. In fact, the interest of both Israel and the United States would be that if Hamas can be eliminated from Gaza, that would be the end of the affair, and then maybe they'll put together some arrangement to perhaps rebuild Gaza and have some kind of a decent civilized administration out there, unlike these terrorists. Again, I think it would be in the interest of the countries to draw the United States into a wider war. But let me tell you something, Arnab, for all the problems that the United States might be facing right now, the fact of the matter remains that many countries around the world for many decades have underestimated the capacity of the United States and regretted it. And I wonder if people might be making a similar mistake right now. Yes, in many ways, the United States does look like it's having major economic problems. It's having major political issues. Political problems. It simply does not have the kind of political leadership it had maybe 20 years back, maybe even earlier. So yes, there does seem to be a bit of a political vacuum also emerging in the United States. But I think you underestimate a country like the United States at your own peril. Having said that, I find it rich for somebody from Russia who's very deeply involved. And again, I'm not taking sides in the Russia-Ukraine war, but we've seen enough civilian casualties in Ukraine and in the war. We've seen the targeting of civilian infrastructure from both sides, incidentally. We've seen all kinds of things happen
Completely
out there, and we've seen. Okay, it's all, everything is unsubstantiated until you open your mouth, in which case it substantiates everything. Thank you. We've read Pravda in the past as well, so thanks a lot for that. But the fact is that it's rich coming from these people, and it's rich coming from the Chinese, giving lectures of human rights to the rest of the world and saying that they actually are looking for peace because peace is in their interest, when they are the biggest warmongers, not just on the borders with India, but throughout the South China Sea, throughout the East China Sea, for that matter. So, a lot of hypocrisy we will see coming forward. And if I was China and Russia, I wouldn't mind that this war gets widened. It becomes a wider war, because it eases the pressure, for example, on the Russian front. And I could completely understand that the Russians would be happy with that. It would certainly, the Chinese would be inclined to think that it weakens not only the American power, it overextends the Americans, but it also gives them a bit of a space as far as the Middle East is concerned, an area for which they're making a very strong pitch. So yes, I think it would be in their interest, but I wouldn't really go to the extent of saying that either the Chinese or the Russians have put the Hamas up to this. I don't think that would. I have not seen any evidence of that, so I wouldn't go that far. But I would certainly think that they would want to profit from a conflict like this, and to that extent, I think they would be justified for their own reasons to profit from it. But whether it'll all work according to their calculations or not, that's another matter. We'll have to wait and see.
Sure. I think Tatiana has been wanting to respond. I can't hear Michael yet.
Who could possibly think that a global cataclysm on this scale is in their interest?
Unsubstantiated accusations. Jesus.
Tatiana, why don't you hand over the children that have been kidnapped by Putin and his honchos? Let's talk about kidnapped children, or is that also in your own reality and it never happened and is unsubstantiated?
Can you speak a little slower? I'm sorry.
Kidnapped children. What about kidnapped children taken by Russia? Is that also unsubstantiated? Ukrainian children kidnapped?
Are you seriously? You're seriously telling me that bringing?
Well, I'm not a center of Soviet studies. Honcho who's
kidnapping.
Say what the party
so we should
tells
have
me.
left them. We should have left them there to die. Seriously.
Ukrainian children? They're not your
Evacuating
responsibility.
children from a bombarded region.
To be brainwashed by
your
Putin's foot soldiers.
Seriously?
Yeah, just like Ceausescu did with the Securitate,
these children,
with orphans.
The children that have been evacuated to safety from a bombarded region, you're calling this kidnapping. Are you out of your mind?
So what do you call it? What do you call it? Putin's foot soldiers for a future war. Just as Ceausescu did for the orphans in Romania who entered the Securitate. They are brainwashed, and brainwashing comes easily to the KGB and FSB. It's part of your life since your state was founded in 1917. Don't even start me on that before I demolish you with history.
I can't stop madness. Are you joking? This is very amusing. Please do continue.
No, I won't, because I won't dignify it further. You have kidnapped children. You have tied up civilians and killed them, 80 and 90-year-olds. So don't tell me about Ukrainians being saved by you.
First of all, I personally have not kidnapped or killed anybody, and you probably should change your narrative.
I never said that.
No, you said you.
But you are sitting in
you kidnapped children.
Sitting in Moscow.
That means that
you are sitting in Moscow. I'm sitting in a democracy.
And?
I can afford to speak. You can't. You would be.
You're
get a knock on the
sitting in
door
a
at
former
midnight.
colonial state that killed,
no, I'm British. I'm not sitting in a former colonial state.
Entire regions.
I'm a British academic. I'm very much at home. You would get a knock on the door from the FSB or the Spetsnaz. I won't. Just remember that.
I will very, very gladly welcome them with open arms if they decide to come. Unfortunately,
Sure,
I still have not. I have yet to meet them.
With tea and Brinichki, with pancakes and tea, I'm sure you would. With tea and pancakes and Pushkin's poetry for recitation, I'm sure you would. Or maybe Anna Akhmatova's poetry, you can read to them over tea and pancakes when they knock on your door. That'd be nice.
You need to slow down. I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying because you're speaking very, very, very fast.
Okay, let me
and
just, Tatiana, one minute. The issue here is, I believe that behind most conflicts, Tatiana, is economics. Like, look at our friend from Islamabad today.
So let's talk economics.
Is Islamabad?
Let's talk Arnab.
Let's look at the company. Let's look at the. Okay, so here's one question to you, Tatiana. Are you happy about the company that you are in right now? The company of countries, like when people say this is part of the China team, they talk about countries like Pakistan, who have nothing left. They are selling their land. They've sold their airports. They've sold their roads. They've sold their. I'm seriously saying they're the largest exporter of donkeys.
Arnab, that you're
they've sold their airlines. I'm just saying this to you. Allow me to continue. Allow me to complete my point. Your personal response I don't want, but I'll tell you. The company you have today is the company of countries like Pakistan, right? The company of countries like Iran. Iran is no longer a sovereign economic country because 91% of its oil goes to China. And similarly, you see, you two are over-dependent on China. So the thing that connects countries like Russia, Pakistan, and Iran is economic dependence on China, which, as you know from every example of every country that has over-invested in the China relationship has ended very badly. You can ask Saeed Elahi. It's ending badly for them. And it's not right, Mr. Saeed Elahi, in large parts of Pakistan. You're forced to learn Mandarin nowadays. So it's not going well for you. You can share your experience, maybe.
Arnab, at least you gave me some time to speak. First of all, I will condemn your false accusations about Pakistan and your concocted stories. Thank God, a participant from Delhi, he corrected the facts about the Indian naval officers arrested in Qatar. It was much before G7 conference. They were arrested for spying for Israel. And they were on deputation from India.
G20, sir, G20. You want to say G20?
G20, sure. So these Indian officers were employed by Qatar Navy. They were working there from 3 years, spying for Israel. They were arrested, trialed, and now they have been awarded death sentence, which will be implemented in few days. So that was the correct story. I'm sorry you linked it with
keep dreaming
with the IMEC. Number one. Number two is that I will condemn one other thing, that is about you, about your government, and about Mr. Prime Minister Mr. Modi, who are behaving in a hypocritic way. One side they are standing tall with Israel, and on the other side they are sending small human assistance, which is just like peanuts, to Palestine. So this is, I don't understand. India, what is doing? What they are doing? They are just...
You will never understand because you don't understand an independent foreign policy because you have none. India is helping the people of Palestine. One minute, let's get the guest from Israel. India is helping the people of Palestine and is against Hamas. We are very clear. There's been no change in our position.
Sorry, Pakistan was part of 44 countries' allied forces who fought against terrorism in Afghanistan.
Arnab, that Russia
and
called
80,000
to
people
condemn
died, and thousands of soldiers they laid down their lives against fight in terrorism. So Pakistan was always part of international community.
Please.
We supported international community.
I must also bring you in.
Terrorism. So this is one thing. The other thing is, please let me talk.
I've never heard such drivel from anybody. Pakistan was helping fight the war of terrorism in Afghanistan.
We support Palestine.
They are the guys who said that when the Taliban won, the Taliban have broken the chains of slavery. It is these Pakistanis. You think the Pakistanis are going to say anything about Hamas? The Pakistanis carry out the same kind of activities that the Hamas does. Pakistanis are the biggest terrorist state in this damn world, and these guys are going to talk about terrorism. Ask this Saeed Elahi fellow, has he ever condemned terrorism of Hamas? What Hamas did, does he identify with it? He will, because that is what these Pakistanis have done, including in India. In 26/11, it was these Pakistani scum who came into India to kill innocent civilians in the same manner in which Hamas killed people in Israel. It is the same Pakistani terrorists who came in Jammu and killed the families of Indian soldiers, including small babies, and beheaded them in Jammu. This third-rate fellow Pakistani who's coming out here and speaking all kinds of lies, I think you should throw him out of your program, because this fellow is only talking lies and he's only spouting all kinds of venomous stuff. These guys, they do not, if this guy is so brave, why doesn't Elahi go and fight with the Palestinians? Out there, Elahi will not go, because Elahi can only come on television and talk big. That is all that these Pakistanis are worth. So forget it. I don't need lectures from the Pakistanis about terrorism or any other thing.
Okay, now going back to the China issue, Mr. Leung,
they called it the victory of Islam, and they were standing with 44 countries to fight terrorism. What nonsense is this Elahi fellow talking?
We are proud of being Muslim.
My question to I think there is
not in India, but all over the world. We are concentrating against
I think there is see
in Qatar. They are doing
Pakistan isn't so important to give it so much time on my program. Pakistan is a rentier state. Pakistan has no economy. Pakistan has no business, no manufacturing. So Shad, we don't waste our breath in India on Pakistan anymore. We've completely dehyphenated ourselves from that non-existent relationship. Thank you, Mr. Elahi, thank you. I know you get all your relevance by comparing yourself to India, but that was 10 years back. I wish to bring in Mr. Leung into this discussion, fascinating discussion. Mr. Leung, you see, with China's shrinking, rapidly aging population impeding our economic growth, and your rate is really going down. I just saw that your near-term economic outlook will weigh on regional growth. You are pulling the region down. There was a time, actually, Michael, when China used to pull Asia up. Now China pulls Asia down, right? And as you know, India's contribution to global economic growth is increasing 18% over the next 5 years as we grow at a very, very rapid pace. So, Mr. Leung, digest that reality. However, Michael, do you expect things to go out of hand? Because China has invested so much in this, that if this does not sort of spread, then China loses out. So isn't it in the interests of all other countries to work together with every other country, maybe even Russia, to make sure that this does not explode? Because the only beneficiary is China. Only beneficiary. Moscow is not going to be a beneficiary eventually.
Well, it seems totally perverse to me for anyone to suggest that a global war would be in the interest of any country. So yeah, obviously, I think avoiding conflict is superior than hastening one. I don't know how anybody could really dispute that. And it seems to me that if you have an alternate calculus, then you're not serving the interest of the people in your country. I mean, Arnab, do you suppose that ordinary Indians would benefit from a cataclysmic global war? I doubt it any more than ordinary Americans or Russians or Europeans would. No. So if, as you alluded to, we are all hurtling towards some cataclysmic conflict, then I think whatever economic problems might exist between India and Pakistan, or whatever depredations you are asserting that China might be inflicting in that regard, that needs to be superseded in its importance by the paramount imperative to avert this coming global conflict. And if people are losing sight of that because they have other feuds that they're dealing with, then I think they've lost sight of what really matters.
Yeah, and Mr. Leung, since you say you're an independent analyst, you should actually say to everyone, including Tatiana and Moscow, that you are disastrous for any country that does business with you. Your debt trap diplomacy, your attempt to trap other countries economically is well known. You know, Malaysia, Mr. Leung, cancelled 2 Chinese projects out of the fear that they will bankrupt the country. Even Ecuador have stopped doing infrastructure projects with you. Sri Lanka, Nepal, Maldives, Pakistan all ruined their economies by trying to be part of the Belt and Road Initiative. You know what happened with the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. You know the levels at which you gave them interest. Nobody trusts you, Mr. Leung. Pakistan is the only country that will go with China. So you will go with Iceland if they provide you economic support. You're so bad. But I want Mr. Leung to respond.
Good road network.
Now, if I'm allowed to respond, I mean, there was too much noise going around in this platform.
Yes, Mr. Leung, you're completely allowed.
A few minutes to respond. Okay. First of all, there was too much twisting of the facts simply for the purpose of mudslinging at China without paying sufficient attention to the real truth of this debate. The debate is about what's happening in Gaza, the war in Gaza.
Sir, does Moscow trust you? You ask Tatiana. You ask Tatiana. Tatiana, does Moscow trust us?
Allow me.
She will not say yes.
If you don't allow me, well,
Moscow does not trust you.
Okay. You invited me to be here to respond. Allow me time. I've been spoken for most of the time. So be respectful to your guests, okay? Now, there is too much twisting of the facts because China still remains the largest trading partner to over 128 countries. They do not trade with China for the sake of China. They trade because it's for benefit themselves. As for the Belt and Road Initiative, there's too much twisting of the facts as well. Because according to the latest research by an independent think tank in London called the Debt Justice, Debt, D-E-B-T, Debt Justice, then they found that they look at all the indebted countries. Most of the countries along the Belt and Road, they are more indebted to Western lenders, commercial lenders, than to China. Now, you're quoting these
please,
kind of
please. Don't fool them, Russians.
Cases have been told upon. The Belt and Road Initiative is the biggest infrastructural project in human history. Never before has the.
No, that's okay, but sir, please don't spread war like
China's learning.
You've spread a virus, now you want to spread war.
Is approach.
Your ministers go missing.
As highlighted in the recent Belt and Road Initiative. So China is now focusing more on smaller projects, more economic, environmentally sustainable projects, bringing more stakeholders. So it's a part of the learning curve. It's no use twisting facts just to
what would our guest in Tel Aviv say to Michael Leung, please?
About what's happening.
What would she say? No, I'm not mudslinging. I'm not mudslinging. I am not mudslinging, sir. Your fingerprints are around what has happened. It's not, sir, people of Israel will never forgive you for what you've done. You can ask Avishag what is the sentiment towards China and Israel today. Ask her. Ask her. Ask Avishag what the sentiment towards China is in Israel today.
China is not much talked about it in the media and also in the public. But we do have some cases that happen with Chain, the clothing company, which Israelis are allowed to order from and buy from. So what they actually did, they basically canceled the free Sundays shipment, which they provide for the entire customers all over the world. Also, the packages that arrived the first and the second week, and also this week, the package that was arrived to the purchases were decorated with the colors of the Palestinian flag, which was very, very bizarre how a clothing company is interfering politics, and imposing it on their own customers. Now, I don't know exactly if China is, I don't think any one of us knows if there is any proof of China's involvement, but we do know that what's happening right now, one of the reasons that this entire war has started from the begin with, it's the creation of a new world, a new Middle Eastern society that will eventually create a connection between the Far East to the Middle East and to the West. And the cherry of it, the cherry of the cake, will be the warming
regional
of
connectivity.
the Israel state with the Arab states, including Saudi Arabia,
exactly.
that eventually will be pressuring the Palestinians to sit and negotiate with Israel. That's what they were trying to prevent. It's about power distribution.
Exactly.
Where is the world power will be sit? If it's going to be sit with the one who are seeking peace.
So I think on this, Abhishek, because I think the
power will sit where the extremist Islamic nations are and the autocratic other countries around the world. This is the main
Abhishek,
issue.
I have to close here, but I'd say one thing at the very end, and I'm sure all of you will agree with me. To use conflict, a long-standing conflict, which has many emotional angles and people's sentiments involved, for economic interest is very unfortunate. I think, in my view, it's China on one side, China and Pakistan on one side, the rest of the world on the other. Trust me, even Moscow does not trust China in this. It's just having to go along. I have to close here. I'm going to take this up further. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Overshot my time limit once again. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. See you tomorrow. Good night and goodbye.